next half inning, Matthew Temple, director of hardball, joins us after this. Hardball, the Girls of Summer, which follows the top female baseball players in the United States, striving for equality, striving for medals in women's baseball, and we are joined by the director of that film, Matt Temple, here on KBO on Sunday. Matt, thank you for joining us, and my first question is, how was the narrator on the movie?
Oh, the narrator, she knocked it out of the park. She did great. It was amazing.
It is, of course, my partner, Jess, Mendoza. When you set out to do this project, what were you trying to do? What do you think you were going to find?
What we thought we would find, I guess, was pretty different than what we ultimately found. And, I don't want to give too much of the film away, but, we followed the U.S. Women's National Baseball team to Korea, actually. That year, the Women's Baseball World Cup was in Korea that year, in Busan. And the U.S. was ranked number 1 in the world, and it was a bit of a challenging year for the women's national baseball team here in the U.S. But of course, when one team struggles, that means some other teams get to succeed. So that was really, so there was that, and so ultimately at the end of the day, we had to look and see where good stuff comes out of challenges, which I think is in a lot of ways the story of women's baseball at this moment too, is that there are challenges, and the way that the passion and the struggle that comes through the challenge is ultimately what makes champions and what makes heroes.
What can those that watch the film learn about women who choose to play baseball, especially over the pressure that there is in the United States to play softball?
Right, ask the question again.
What can a lot of people watching the movie learn about these women that choose to play baseball over the sport of softball?
One thing is I think that's really important is I guess I would say when you have a dream, that how sort of important that is to honor that, and the women who played baseball obviously had to make major sacrifices. As you know, from your history, though there are similarities between the game of softball and the game of baseball. They're different sports, and so that you see these young women who have their passion, their love, and then have to shift that, have to make changes, and as many of the women who play on the women's national baseball team either had to switch sports usually in college, particularly if they were going to get a scholarship. Malika Underwood switched to play basketball and volleyball in college because baseball just wasn't an option, and she wasn't going. To her, softball wasn't the same thing. So there are sacrifices that have to be made, and I think that's also one of the things that's pretty beautiful about it. Is if you love something enough to make that kind of sacrifice for it, it shows a lot of dedication and passion.
Joined by Matt Temple, director of hardball, and just as an update on the game, you saw in the double box that run did not score on the timing play at the end of the half inning. The run did not score in time. The out at second base happened first on a very close play. Matt will join us for the next half inning as well as we continue to talk about women's baseball and the movie Hardball. Back here for KBO Action, LG and Doosan, and we are joined by Matt Temple, the director of Hardball, the Girls of Summer. And Matt, as you were going through the research for this project, what did you learn about women's baseball that people should know before they even watch the film?
Well, that it's awesome. play an awesome baseball game. And sort of the seminal moment for me is during the tryouts for the national team. They were doing the tryouts at Fullerton on the Fullerton baseball field, and people were coming around, and just kind of like their jaws were hitting the floor. As you know, Fullerton has a fantastic baseball program, and the guys from the baseball team were showing up, and we're sort of shocked, which is both a testament to how awesome these women play the game, and also just kind of showed just how much of an anomaly it is. I mean, one of the things that I found when I would tell people that I was making a movie about women who play baseball, immediately people would say, "You mean softball?" Which was something that these young women hear all the time. The women hear it all the time. "Hey, yeah, I'm going to a baseball tournament. I'm going to play in the women's baseball World Cup." And then these women get corrected. "Oh, you mean softball?" As though they don't know what sport they play. And I have daughters, and they all played baseball. Two of them through Little League and one of them through high school. And one of the things that I would hear from them is, what is wrong with people that they think I'm so dumb as a woman that I don't know what sport I play? And they say it has nothing to do with that. There are a lot of things that might have to do with gender, but not that. Because as a director of the movie, immediately people would say, "Oh, you mean softball?" Because the idea of a woman playing baseball somehow still in the American psyche is as strange as putting like a rover on the sun. Like, you can't go to the sun, that doesn't happen. And really the quality of the game is amazing. It's fantastic. Sorry, Jess.
Well, on the quality game, you talked about not just in the U.S., but as you mentioned, we've been able to call these games in South Korea. You were able to see women's baseball internationally, especially in the country of South Korea. Can you kind of describe women's baseball internationally? Min-soo, as a young player I was able to see in South Korea that plays baseball, has really made a name for herself. But what did you see as far as South Korea women's baseball?
Yeah, well, that was really cool. And the year 2016, I believe, was the first or the second time Korea took part in the Women's Baseball World Cup. So 4 years ago, it was very new for Korea, and sort of getting to watch, as you're saying now, over the last 4 years, it's amazing what that did for women's baseball in Korea by hosting the games. And the crowds were fantastic. I mean, watch the movie. You'll see the stands are packed in Busan. It was so exciting. The energy was amazing. And it was, 2 years later, the games were hosted in the U.S. And one of the perhaps sad but also shocking differences was in Korea, packed stands. The crowds were into it. I mean, you're calling Korean games. The Korean crowds are fantastic. And they don't just bring that for the men's game. They bring it for the game, period. It was so wonderful to see.
This down the line for Jose Fernandez and a base knock, but a great play by Lee and Wright to hold him to a two-out single. So Fernandez with a hit. He's now 1 for 3. Matt, where do you think women's baseball goes from here?
That's such a hard thing to say, but one of the things that has sort of really rightly been pointed to by all of the players on the women's national team is that you can't just go from where we are now to, say, professional ball, because as you know, the sport actually requires a lot of development. You don't just show up and be good. And baseball's not a game where you can just be a great athlete and show up and be amazing. It's such a game of repetition, of talent, of smarts, of getting to know the game. It's one of these great games that you can keep playing. You get better with age sometimes, right? I I mean, obviously there's the physical part of it, but it's a game that you can keep playing as you get older in ways that you can't with other games because of the knowledge part. And so what you have in some ways as such a challenge for women is just to be able to play as girls. You know, we need girls baseball before you get women's baseball. It's really going to be a development thing, and you know, Australia is starting a professional women's baseball team. They had also started small, the same way they did in Japan. Say again?
Sorry, England, I know, is starting a women's professional league as well next year.
Yeah, and so
They just
I think,
announced that about a month ago.
Right. And so I think that what you're going to see is, you know, what's next is really, you know, one of the things when you have a pro league, you give girls something they can look forward to and to aspire to. But then the other thing is really coming right down to the beginning. And when a 6-year-old girl wants to play baseball, it's that she's thinking, this is a possibility for me. And her parents can also really get behind it as opposed to thinking this is just a cute little phase and she's going to have to get a grow out of it.
We're joined by Matt Temple. Jess, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say we've got 2 outs, so I know this can't be a super long answer, but you mentioned passion that these women have, and I feel like to do something, and this is for anyone watching that's trying to do something that isn't, you know, maybe stereotypical, isn't out there, that you see a ton, but can you kind of describe the psyche that you saw with the women who choose to do something that maybe a lot of people aren't super supportive of or understanding of, and yet they still pursue it?
Yeah, boy. You know, I think one of the things that really shows up, there's a couple of things, but one is that when you put yourself into something in that way, it's actually going to bleed over into other areas of your life. And that fortitude is amazing.
And we have out number number 3, so we're going to have to let you go. But thank you so much for the insight. We really appreciate your time. Congratulations on the movie. It is great stuff. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. And the film is out now. If anyone wants more information, at Hardball Film on all social media and hardballfilm.com, you can find links to watch it.
2-1 your score is still. Pivotal play of the 4th inning. Subin Jung is up. Bases loaded. Fly ball center field. Chunky Hong comes up firing. Throw comes into second base. And watch home and watch second. Right at the last instant, the tag comes down at second base on the slide behind the play, and the run does not score. It's a timing play. And Choi's run does not count because he did not touch home in time. The 3rd out happened first, and so it remains a 2-1 score as we play into the 6th inning in Seoul, South Korea.